Hi everyone, so welcome to Investing for Value. So today I want to go through some Warren Buffett quotes, particularly in this type of time when having some wisdom from Warren Buffett, it's really useful, and also it's also a time to recognize how brilliant and knowledgeable Buffett is. So this first quote is, price is what you pay, value is what you get. And that's kind of one of those situations where if you're new to investing, you really don't know the value of what you're buying into because you don't know what this company does, you haven't done research, and you haven't even tried to value this company. Whereas when you go to a supermarket, right, when you buy a pack of chips, you kind of expect that you're getting the value of a pack of chips. When you buy a can of Coke, you kind of get the same value of a can of Coke because they're very set goods. You kind of know them really well, so you know what to pay. Whereas, well, companies, a lot of people don't actually know what the value of a company is because they don't know the company well, and they're not used to paying that certain price for this company. So that's kind of the problem where normally when you go to a supermarket, price is what you pay, and it also matches as value as what you get, being very similar. Though with the stock market, price is what you pay, but you may not get that value in the stock market because people set prices, and it's all individuals, and prices could easily be undervalued or highly inflated. It just depends on the situation. So that's kind of one of those things that you want to be mindful of. That, yeah, you're sure you can pay what the price of this share is currently, though it doesn't mean you're going to do well off it. So you want to understand a company and know whether the price you're paying is actually justifying the value that you're getting. Alright, so let's go to the second quote. Opportunities come infrequently. When it rains gold, put out a bucket, not a thimble. So, that's kind of seems very intuitive. Like, if it's raining gold, then yeah, who wouldn't put out a bucket? But we're always in this situation where we don't actually prepare properly. Like, if we know something's coming down in price, or we see these events coming, but we don't prepare, like, say, finances to be able to buy these stocks, then we are literally just using a thimble. So, like, say, um, you had a $10,000 portfolio, and then you keep 500 cash, and literally your 500 cash would be your thimble. Whereas if you saw like a recession coming, you would keep like $5,000 or more, and that's a real big bucket because in the scheme of your portfolio, of course, if you had 100,000 and you kept 50,000, yeah, that's a good bucket. But if you had 100,000 and you only kept like 1,000, yeah, that's a thimble. So you need to understand, opportunities are infrequent, especially like recessions. They don't come around often, and when one does, you want to have your bucket ready. Alright, so whether we're talking about socks or stocks, I like to buy good quality merchandise. So if you've ever had good quality socks or even good quality clothing, when it's good quality, it just lasts longer and it doesn't wear and tear so easily. But if you buy poor quality clothing, it kind of just wears down really easily. So it's the same thing about your stocks. If you buy bad quality stocks, the company just going to wear down over time and it's going to lose its value. Whereas a good quality company tends to prolong its value, and in most cases actually increases the value. So you want to shop in the same way. We simply attempt to be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. So what does this mean? Well, it basically means when everyone's all being greedy, there's actually not a lot of value left on the table for you because they're eating everything. And if you try to get in, you just put yourself at a high risk. It's kind of like when you buy Tesla at like $900, when it used to be about a few $100s. Everyone's already being greedy. Everyone's already pushed it high, and then if you get in at that very high price range, then yeah, you're going to be taking a lot of risks. So that's when you should have been fearful. The thing is, when others are fearful, when others are like looking at a Tesla stock and they're going, that's a few $100s. I don't want to be buying in a company that might not be doing too well. Whereas if you know this company could do well, it's time to be greedy because other people are being fearful. So, kind of, that's one of those lessons. When other people are being fearful, particularly when things are being sold down. A price could be dropping and people just feel like they should get out before it becomes cheaper, so they get out, and when there's nothing really too wrong about the situation, it's just people being fearful about prices dropping. Alright, so let's go to the next quote. The best thing that happens to us is when a great company gets into temporary trouble. We want to buy them when they're on the operating table. So essentially, you want to buy companies, like in terms of opportunities, you don't really get opportunities to buy really good quality companies unless they're kind of in trouble, because then when they're in trouble, no one really wants to buy them. And it basically means it's a chance for you. And the question is this a permanent issue that basically means the stock's not going to come back? Or is this a temporary issue where people sold down the stock, but of course the company can come back, and when it comes back to normal, the stock price comes back up with it. So that's kind of that's kind of the thing you want to consider. Like, some companies can go through inventory issues. That basically they held too much inventory, they couldn't sell it, they basically had to get rid of it at a loss, and yeah, the profit statements don't look too good, and basically the company can be sold down in the short term. But if you know in the long term that it's going to do well, then basically that is the chance to be buying. Alright, so next quote. It's far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because, when you buy something nice, and you pay a fair price for it, it's going to continue to do really well. But if you buy something that's just like average, but you manage to buy it at a really cheap price, well, the average company isn't going to fare as well, and in the long term, you're definitely better off with the wonderful company rather than the fair company. Alright, so next quote. Don't try and drive a 9,800 pound truck over a bridge that says its capacity is 10,000 pounds. But go down the road a little bit and find one that says capacity 15,000 pounds. So this goes to, Buffett's margin of safety rule, where he goes, don't pay a certain fair value price for a stock. Pay below fair value, because on the chance that the stock isn't worth the current value or it gets into trouble, then the price you paid isn't too bad, because it allows you to not lose as much, and also it saves you overpaying. So, like, if something's selling for $100 a stock, but you pay $80, if something happens and it just comes down a little bit, then you add $80, you feel safe. But if you pay, like, for $100 stock, you pay $100 and it comes down to 80, all of a sudden you've overpaid. So you want to get into a situation where you're not overpaying. Always good to underpay, because you never know what happens, particularly with companies. Something always goes wrong occasionally. If you aren't willing to own a stock for 10 years, don't think about owning it for 10 minutes. So as Buffett is a long-term investor, he likes, he always likes to look at a stock as being something that will improve in value year after year. So that kind of makes a lot of sense. Like, you don't want to buy a stock because you're thinking it's going to do really well in the short term, because if it doesn't do well in the short term, and it doesn't even do well in the long term, you're stuck. Though if you buy a stock knowing it's going to do well in the long term and it doesn't do well in the short term, at least you can wait and it's going to do well in the long term. So that's kind of one of those things. You don't want to get stuck in a situation where you end up selling at a loss. If the business does well, the stock eventually follows. So this one's pretty straightforward. Usually if a business does do well, the stock price usually does well after that. But of course, I've been in situations where this business has done well and the stock didn't continue to do well, but it does well over time, of course. It just means you just have to take a bit of patience, and it does eventually translate eventually. So that's why you just want to give stocks a good amount of time. Do not take yearly results too seriously. Instead, focus on 4 or 5 year averages. And that makes sense. It's about consistency. It's not about an exceptional year. And then if the following years are just terrible, then you've just invested in a company that's just done well on a temporary basis. Should you find yourself in a chronically leaking boat, energy devoted to changing vessels is likely to be more productive than energy devoted to do patching leaks. So what does this mean? Why wouldn't you want to patch the Why wouldn't you patch the leaks? Why would you want to focus on changing ships? Because at the end of the day, when you get into a problem with particularly a stock or a company that has all these problems, chances are these problems could stem, in many places, and you just don't know how far it goes. So you're better off just changing to a much better quality boat, sailing off into sunset and being happy, rather than trying to devote your energy trying to find out what's the problem with this company. It's basically whether you should buy growth companies or turnaround plays. Growth companies will continue to do really well, whereas companies that have done, that have kind of done terribly, but you're hoping they're going to turn around. That takes a lot more energy, and the chance of being right is usually it's much lower as well. So your chance of a good quality company like Growth doing really well is a higher chance than something that's a turnaround play. Though, if you've got a knack for picking around turnaround plays, then, sometimes you can do really well with them. I'm not saying you can't, but as Buffett would say, um, he's been here long enough. He knows that good quality companies are always the preference. Alright, the more important thing to do if you find yourself in a hole is to stop digging. So the one thing we all do a lot of is we get into a situation where we basically invest in a stock that's not too good, or we keep changing stocks and we keep losing money, and we just keep basically digging ourselves a hole. So the one thing you need to do is just to stop, think clearly before you even do anything else, because the one thing is we're so rushed, particularly in earning money. It's incredibly sometimes you might just think it's incredibly silly that you didn't just stop and think clearly. But sometimes people just get caught up in this drama where they're like, well, I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't want to stop. If you lose money, your next motive is to just earn it back. And you think taking too much time to think about this is actually not going to be good, whereas it actually is good. Just sometimes just stop and think clearly, and you might well be better off for it. The stock market is no cold strike game. You don't have to swing at everything. You can wait for your pitch. So that's the thing. No one's forcing you to buy a stock. No one's forcing you to sell a stock. You can do it at your own leisure. But it's not like a game where you have to swing or you're out. You can just take your time. You can make the decisions you want, and over time you're gonna do really well. It's a long-term game. Don't worry about that. You have to swing at every pitch. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. Investing is not a game where the guy with the 160 IQ beats the guy with a 130 IQ. Now, we've seen this a lot. We've seen how people can just be lucky. Like, you could be really intelligent, you can make all these decisions, and still end up losing so much money. So why does the intelligent guy not necessarily need to be that intelligent? Because sometimes intelligent people think they're more intelligent, that they get into these ideas. So future technology. You invest because you know how good this future technology is, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do really well, because this future technology company could be burning a lot of cash. No one understands it, so they don't really buy into the idea, and the products just fail to really take off. Whereas the guy with 130 IQ is like, if I invest in McDonald's, people have to eat, so I'm going to do well. So you can kind of see sometimes thinking in a simple way beats thinking in a complex way. And it's just one of those things where really smart people just try to outsmart them in every way. Not always the case, of course. But it's just one of those things. You just have to think in a simple way. What does the world demand? Where is demand leading to in the future? And who's the company supplying it? Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's swimming naked. So yeah, who's swimming naked in this situation right now? We can kind of see like all the companies that are not holding enough cash. There's certain business models that are not holding up. Yep, that's one of those things. It does show up when the tide comes out, especially when economic troubles are afoot. You have all these companies all of a sudden they're going, oh, how do we survive? Predicting rain doesn't count. Building the ark does. So that's the thing. You could say, oh, I saw this recession coming. I saw this company price dropping. I did this. I did this. But did you really build the ark? Did you really pile the money? Did you really invest in this company? It's great to be able to predict it, right? But does it really count if you haven't even bought anything into it? It's kind of like lacking conviction. You can say something, but if you don't use your actions to back it up, then you're not showing enough belief in your actions. So that's the thing. Predicting the rain doesn't count. Building the ark does. This does not this does not bother Charlie and me, and indeed we enjoy such price declines if we have funds available to increase our positions. So as Buffett puts, it doesn't bother him and Charlie when prices decline as long as they have funds to invest and increase their position. And that's the one thing that we all don't have. We all, when we invest, most of us just put all our money in at once. We don't keep a little on the sideline when we really should. So that's the thing. If you don't want a price dropping to bother you next time, be sure to hold some cash to buy into it. Cash is to a business as oxygen is to an individual. Never thought about it when it was present. The only thing in your mind when it is absent. So yeah, we don't think about oxygen when we can easily breathe it. But if you're trapped in a box and oxygen is basically slowly being used up, of course you're going to be thinking, how do I get oxygen? And that's the thing of businesses. Cash is the lifeblood of businesses. As you can see of airlines and cruise liners, they need cash because they didn't hold enough for a rainy day, and now that businesses are not doing well, they don't have enough cash. So that's the thing. It's important, and you want to invest in companies that either generate a lot of it and also have a balanced statement that shows they have a lot of it rather than a lot of debt. If you like spending 6 to 8 hours per week working on investments, do it. If you don't, then dollar cost average into an index fund. And yeah, Buffett's quite right. Most of us probably don't want to invest in stocks. We probably don't even want to spend the time on it. We just want to make money. I personally do like stocks, so I invest in. I put more than that time, more than 6 to 8 hours per week easily. Um, that might even be what I put in a day sometimes. So I'm clearly someone who likes this area. I'm clearly someone who wants to be here, and I do my research. But there's a lot of people that don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the research. And for them, yeah, as Buffett would put, they're better off, slowly drifting their money into an index. When prices are going up by a little bit, when prices are going down by a little bit, just dollar cost average. It's a simple rule. And over time, indexes do perform well, and you'll just perform well in general. You don't have to be terribly smart at this. You don't have to be you don't have to get into certain companies. You don't have to spend too much time researching if you don't want to. Just go into indexes, nice and simple. Let the market itself do the work for you. Never invest in a business you cannot understand. Now, this makes sense, right? Because if you don't know the business, then why do you have a business and investing into it? Because if it doesn't do well, you're going to panic. You're not going to know what happened. So, like, if it's an airline and all of a sudden the price of oil goes up and you go, well, why is that affecting the profit? Well, airlines kind of use a lot of petrol. So, if the price of oil goes up, yeah, you can guarantee the expenses went up. So that's kind of one thing. If you don't understand a business and what makes it work and run, you really need to re-examine your investment. We want products where people feel like kissing you instead of slapping you. Yeah, so, in terms of, there's all sorts of situations. If you're a mining company destroying, precious historical land, no one's going to appreciate you for that. If you're an oil company spilling oil into the ocean, no one's going to appreciate you for that. Or if you're Facebook and you're like intruding in people's privacy, no one's appreciating you for that. But if you're making like Teslas and people appreciate you for, making an innovative change to the world, then yeah, people are going to kiss you for that. So it's a matter of just analyzing and checking, what kind of companies do you want to be in? And it's likely you want to be in companies that people appreciate you in. Alright, so buy companies with strong histories of profitability and with a dominant business franchise. It makes sense that you want to buy into businesses that are proven to be profitable, and they dominate the kind of industry. So if you invest in like Facebook, who is proven to be very profitable, and they dominate the social media scene, well, it kind of means that's the type of company you really want to buy into. Whereas if you buy into a company that hasn't proven profitability, it doesn't dominate the business area, it could easily get into a lot of trouble. The most important investment you can make is in yourself. So, it makes a lot of sense. If you invest in a book and you learn how to, learn knowledge about investing and how to invest, it's so much easier to do that than say like you rely on someone else and you go, oh, what's the next best stock tip? You're not investing in yourself. You're just investing in someone else. You're asking them, and they're always constantly building on their knowledge and becoming better. Whereas you're not really getting better if you're not learning this stuff. So if you basically start reading up on it, you'll become better at what you do. So that's the most important investment. You can make a lot of money investing in stocks, but if you don't even know how you did it, that's kind of a bit difficult for you. So you want to get into a situation where you're always improving yourself over improving this, over not improving yourself, right? And yeah, as it goes to the next quote, read 500 pages like this every day. That's how knowledge works. It builds up like compound interest. All you have to do, all you can do, but I guarantee not many of you will do it. Yeah, so that's kind of one thing. Literally no one's going to read 500 pages, but if you do, you're going to be incredible for it. Though, 500 pages doesn't mean like sit and read a whole book of 500 pages. It just means like 500 pages worth of knowledge. You could listen to a podcast, you can listen to an audiobook, you can talk to people, you can watch a YouTube video. But it's like if you did 500 pages of equivalent of knowledge and let it build up over time, yeah, you'll become incredibly insightful. You'll be able to know what to do when situations arise. And it comes back to the, most important investment is in yourself. And that's what Buffett likes to make. He's done it for himself. He's become an incredibly knowledgeable guy when it comes to stocks. And, you kind of want to do that too, where you learn about companies, you learn about industries, and, those are the things that make you a better investor and just puts you in a better situation all the time, rather than having to rely on certain, advice from analysts or, anywhere else. After 25 years of buying and supervising a great variety of businesses, Charlie and I have not learnt how to solve difficult business problems. What we have learnt is to avoid them. Yeah, so it kind of speaks about the approach that Buffett likes to take. He likes to invest in companies that have good management, that solve problems that they don't have to deal with. Whereas if they invest into companies that have all these problems and management doesn't know how to deal with it, it's incredibly difficult for a shareholder. So as a shareholder, when you invest in a company, you're not ready to deal with these problems, and if management doesn't know how to deal with it, that's a pretty big problem. So As you as an investor, you don't want to invest in companies that have problems that management can't solve, and as you as a shareholder probably couldn't solve them as well. So yeah, it's better to avoid these situations. Now, the stock market is designed to transfer money from the active to the patient. So yeah, like a lot of people just like sell out of stocks for like temporary situations, or they sell out of stocks because it's just not moving. Whereas if people are patient, eventually the price, if a company performs well, the price performs well, and you eventually do get the benefit. What we learn from history is that people don't learn from history, and yeah, that's pretty accurate. History is printed in books. People don't read the books. People can tell you there's a recession coming, but people just think if prices are low, I'm buying, or they don't consider that things could be even lower. Uh, People just don't like to learn. Yeah, and I've seen it firsthand. Like people just do not like to learn. As much as you want to. Like, I mean, if you're watching this video, you like to learn, and that's pretty good. And also people just get mixed up in emotions. They do things that they know isn't right, and then basically it leads to calamity. There's a reason why certain events happen all the time, because basically people don't learn, and that's why history repeats. If you look out throughout history, certain events have always just happened a certain way. Stock markets are, in a way, simple in that sense. They're either rising or they're dropping, and basically you just have to learn in history what makes it drop. And there you go. But the thing is, a lot of people just don't learn from it. If you don't learn from it, how are you going to protect against? Alright, diversification is a protection against ignorance. It makes very little sense for those who know what they're doing. Yeah, so if you know you're investing in a really good quality company, you don't have to invest in a whole bunch of companies. You can just like condense your investments into, like a few companies, because you know what they're doing, you know their future, and yeah, like as much as diversification is great, maybe you don't necessarily need it all the time. Particularly if it's like you're investing into like Tesla, and you like go, I believe in Tesla, I believe in Amazon. You don't have to diversify into 100 different companies. You can invest in one or two, and given what they do, that they're going to do incredibly well on it. It's better to hang out with people better than you, pick out associates whose behaviour is better than yours, and you'll drift in that direction. So yeah, that's the one thing. The people that are around you, they have a huge influence on you, and you're better off surrounding yourself with people who are going to have a good influence. They're going to teach you what to do, where to go, and you're going to be, you're going to be so much better for that than if you hang around people who don't like investing. It means you're not even going to get into investing, and that happens a lot. Like, if you look about the people around you, people who don't get into investing, it's likely they haven't actually had people that do investing around them, so they've never thought about it, they've never been able to ask someone about it, and for that, they never get into investing, and they never get to understand how good investing is and how it can actually make a change to their life. And it's yeah, one of those things. It's about who you hang around with sometimes. The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful say no to almost everything. Yeah, so yeah, it's one of those things. If you spread your time out into so many different things, you can't focus. You can't make yourself the best of what you can be at a certain thing. And the same thing with companies. You want to invest in, you know, the best company. You don't want to invest in, like, if there's like 10 airlines and you're invested in all 10 of them, maybe you're very diversified, but you're not going to get the most successful one. Whereas you invest in the 2, 3 successful ones, you're going to do the best. And it's the same thing. If you have time and you diversify your time and you're going out all the time, um, you're not able to spend your time on investing books. You're not able to become the best of what you can be. Or it could just be in any profession in general. If you're not able to spend the time on it, you're not going to be as good as you can be. You'll be successful, but you might not be extremely successful. So that's a big question. Do you want to be extremely successful, or do you just want to be successful? Or, you know, if you just want to get success, it's a matter of saying no to more things, confine what you do down, so you can be incredibly good at what you do. And Buffett's main rule number one, never lose money. Rule number two, never forget rule number one, because when you lose money, it's incredibly difficult to come back. Like, if you lose 50% of your money, you need 100% to come back. If you have $10,000, you lose 5,000. You're holding 5,000, going, I need to earn 100%, which is incredibly difficult, and also very very hard. So, if 50% was more difficult, imagine 100%. And it just goes for everything. The minute you lose money, it's just so much harder to come back. So that, don't worry if you don't earn money, just don't lose money. That's the most important thing. And yeah, I hope those were really useful. Those are certain quotes that I enjoy, and I think they're really insightful. They come from Buffett, and he's proven throughout decades that this type of knowledge and wisdom has assisted him to become incredibly good at what he does, and incredibly profitable. And now he's one of the world's richest people. So, hopefully that helped. Let me know if there's any other investors you want me to look at. I love reading these quotes about all these different investors, and I love using my experience to just try to interpret them in a certain way. Because they can be, something like this is like, never lose money. That seems very simple. That, like, it kind of seems like, oh yeah, well, that's the one thing that no investor wants to do, lose money. But it comes down to risk. Buffett's kind of trying to tell you, don't take so much risk, because if you do lose your money for taking too much risk, it's really not worth it, because it takes so much more to come back. You just want to do things that don't have the same amount of risk, so that you have in a sense, a very fair idea that you're going to get your money back. So, that's coming back to this. And it's one of those things. If you know these rules, you're mindful of them. You save yourself from making bad decisions. And as investors, we don't always make the best decisions. Let's just be honest with that, right? Um, yeah. So hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, let me know if there's what your favorite quote was, or if there's any other investors you want me to look at. Until then, good luck investing, everyone.